Well, good morning. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to our beautiful campus here at Savannah Technical College. My name's Brent Stubbs, and I'm the Dean for General Education, or General Studies, where I guide the service delivery of all of our core curriculum here at the college. Now, a lot of people don't realize that includes 27 courses that have a one-to-one transfer to the University System of Georgia. So I always like to take this kind of opportunity to bring you into the Savannah Tech family. So why do we celebrate this annual event at Savannah Technical College? There's a lot of options in this community. And so I mentioned the beauty of our campus, and this is a very impressive college campus, but I would be foolish to imagine that in such a beautiful city, such as Savannah, that this is the best there is to offer. I'm not from Savannah. I have one child who was born here, and I have the paperwork to prove it. However, beauty is not in the eye of the beholder, but rather, I submit, in the place the eye chooses to behold. So while beautiful buildings and landscapes abound in this great city, there is something beautiful seeing lives changed and the cycle of poverty broken by the collective goodwill of a community and the power of a choice. Yes, that is very beautiful. So here on White Bluff, Step Up Savannah doesn't see the congested traffic headed toward Durham or that weird building with the globe spinning overhead. But instead, Step Up sees something beautiful in the lives that come here to be transformed. And are. I have to report something, fresh off the presses, brand news, that in the last 10 years, this year, Savannah Technical College had the highest average in-field job placement rate in our history in the last 10 years, 86.3% in-field placement. And a total placement rate, this means of graduates, who's working? If you come here and you graduate, are you working? 96.3%. The partnership between Savannah Technical College and Step Up Savannah ensures that the great people of this community receive the training and education they need to access a pathway out of poverty. The hostess city ceases to be hospitable if there ceases to exist people with the expertise to deliver the high-quality experiences we've come to expect and tourists flock to find. In the very kitchens behind us, thanks to our wonderful chef Jean-Yves Vandevie, this takes place. So you are seeing live evidence of this kind of transformation. And more broadly, Step Up's intentional selection of Savannah Technical College acknowledges that the gap between poverty and opportunity is education. And conversely, Savannah Technical College welcomes Step Up this morning and welcomes the community. And let me just say, I told Suzanne, she really puts everyone in the same room. But there's no way for me to acknowledge all the special and unique individuals here one by one, or I'd take up the whole morning. We welcome Step Up here because we understand this bridge between education, between poverty and opportunities education. But in our town, Step Up coordinates the critical task of helping people find and support their journey across the bridge to personal prosperity. So we recognize that. And we welcome this community that is the team behind that placement rate that we're talking about. We put the graduates out, but you're there to welcome them into this great community. So we're excited that you're here. If you'd like a tour, please reach out to me. I would be happy to take you around this great campus and show you all the good things that are going on. And welcome again to Savannah Technical College, and enjoy your breakfast.
Well, moving right along, I'd like to properly welcome you to our to Step Up's annual meeting and the continued celebration of Step Up's 10th year anniversary of our effort to reduce poverty in Savannah. I'd like to recognize Step Up's board of directors who are here today. Would you please stand up and give us a little wave? Don't be bashful. There we go. I'd also like to ask the Step Up staff to stand up and be recognized. They're waving. And also want to thank all of you that are here today in your efforts to reduce poverty. One of the things that's really special about Step Up's approach, and has been the whole time we've been working on this, is our partnership with many agencies and other organizations and businesses in the city of Savannah. So thank you, every one of you, for being here too, and for everything you do to help reduce poverty. You know, no one said it would be easy when we started working on this, and it has not been easy. But working with our many partners in Savannah, Step Up continues to make a difference. Our thanks to Sean McNally of Cinemobius, if I've said that right, Sean, for producing the following video made to commemorate Step Up's 10th year anniversary. Please enjoy the video. And Nate, I don't know how to start this thing, so here he comes.
We're marking the anniversary of 2015 as the 10-year mark because our first director was hired in 2005.
The mayor really was wanting to highlight the plight of people in poverty and the whole issue. It's not something that's typically spoken about at the dinner table, and to put it out there and to create some advocacy efforts probably was first priority.
I think Step Up was started as the action arm. Former Mayor Floyd Adams had done the anti-poverty task force, and then former Mayor Otis Johnson, when he got in office, decided that he would basically take the facts that had been found as they were known then and start Step Up as the group that would act on what had been found out through the anti-poverty task force.
Those of you who know me know I'm an action-oriented person, so it didn't take much for me to take that report and to look at it and then to say, during my administration, we're going to address this persistent poverty problem. They said that we should call this the Step Up Initiative. And man, I took that and ran with it right away, because I said, that's perfect, because people in poverty must take responsibility for making an effort to get themselves and their families out of poverty, so they have to step up.
In November of 2005, we kicked off that program because every commissioner and chairman bought into it, to how we're going to help these kids complaining in the public that they can't get work. And the first person we bring on as a partner was the Building Home Builders Association. And we met with the directors, about 3 other staff members. They bought into it, and after we bought in from them, we went to CAT, the transportation. They bought into it to provide a ticket at discount, or free ticket, for candidates who are in the program that can't get from point A to point B.
Now, in most major cities that I've been to and lived in, you enter the system. Once you're in the system, you could transfer to whatever bus or train or whatever is provided to get to your destination. But here, CAT had it where they'd raised the fare to $1, and you had to pay $1 each time you got on a bus. We wanted the transfer back into the system, that once you paid your fare, it was going to be the next bus you got on, you just used your transfer and kept it moving. And when that happened, that was just a wonderful thing for people struggling each day. Some of these people had 2 and 3 jobs they were trying to keep and still are.
The use of the poverty simulation, I think, has been one of the most beneficial things that Step Up has done. It has helped both poor people and non-poor people understand the vicissitudes of life that a person in poverty experiences. Too many middle-income people and privileged folk believe that if these folk would just get off their you-know-what, they wouldn't be poor. Well, some of that's true, and some of it's not. But when those folk go through that simulation, they truly get an understanding of how tough and challenging it is to move your way out of poverty.
I guess I probably would have given it about a 50% chance to actually have a life of 10 years or more, and so I'm really happy that Step Up has flourished. Really, it's just taken off from a very small beginning. So we didn't even have a director in the beginning. It was just a group of committed individuals.
I know they can say they go back to parental, they go back to school, they blame the neighborhood, they blame everybody. But it's not everybody that have to be blamed. It's us that we have to come together and combat this poverty issue.
We've got to prevent poverty, we've got to intervene in it, and we've got to help those who, in terms of, look at what happens in a recession with layoffs. People get laid off and they slip into poverty. So we need those kind of supports so that when the economy turns around, then they can be gainfully employed again. And those people go in and out. Some of those go in and out. So to me, that's the strategy, the overall big strategy that I would hope this community will eventually get to. They're not there yet, but that's my hope.
We always try to encourage people to take responsibility and step up and take that responsibility for their own well-being. I think people are just, you're going to be more encouraged, you're going to feel better about what changes for you when you realize and know that you've done this for yourself.
Hey there! I want to be a zoologist, neurosurgeon, or cardiosurgeon.
I love Savannah because the libraries are very interested and they have millions of books that are very interested to read.
What could people do to make Savannah better and different?
Stop doing bad things.
We're going to be showing this video to a bunch of grown-ups, and we're going to be talking about how we can make Savannah better. What do you want those grown-ups to know about how they can make Savannah better?
They're being great people.
Step up, Savannah!
Step up, Savannah, that's great. Good morning, everybody. And thank you so much for coming out. It's really, really a pleasure to see everybody here and to enjoy this fabulous Savannah Tech breakfast again. Before I dive in, I wanted to do a couple things. One is notice we actually have a hashtag. This is very new for Step Up. So please, feel free to share your impressions and reactions today. And I wanted to also just take a second. On your tables, there's a couple of forms. One is that our friends at Healthy Savannah are back this year with a survey, and they promise it'll take you just about 5 minutes to fill out. Your responses will actually help them better understand how to reduce childhood obesity and improve the overall health of our underserved residents. We also have a commit to action form, which I will get to in a minute. So, 2015, frankly, the occasion of our 10th anniversary has been a time of reflection at Step Up. and not so much celebration. After all, the poverty rate is hovering at 26% still. Our wages have remained stagnant, and our community continues to experience real disparity in economic opportunity, even in the face of a growing local economy. We've spent a good part of this year getting input from all quarters for the organization's strategic planning, and our new mission statement reflects the feedback that we've heard. Let me read it to you. Step Up engages all sectors of the community to improve the economic mobility and financial stability of families in Savannah and Chatham County. I'm proud of what we've accomplished. Our staff and board make a lot happen with very few resources. And just a few highlights. Our Chatham Apprentice Program is one of a handful of community-based job readiness programs open to all adults in Chatham County, and our placement rate is about 50% or better on average. With Consumer Credit Counseling Service, we reach thousands each year through financial education workshops and coaching offered at work sites, public libraries, and workforce development programs. Bank on Savannah opens at least 1,000 new bank accounts each year, and we leverage hundreds of thousands of dollars each year for our network. With Chatham County Safety Net Planning Council, our partners have managed to enroll more than 1,280 children in public health care programs. And our new Lifeline loan, offered through employers by Georgia Heritage Federal Credit Union, means that employees with low or even no credit scores can get no questions asked loans at excellent rates. But this is not enough. Our community can do more, and to move the needle, we have to do more. I know folks are frustrated in our community. In my position, I actually hear it from all angles. Those who think we've done enough, and those who argue that our community hasn't done much at all. I almost hate to say this, but at 10 years old, this effort is just getting started. We need to think a lot bigger and work a lot deeper in Savannah. We need to build bridges connecting our youth to this emerging creative economy with its promise of higher paying jobs. We need to build on our assets and develop our own homegrown talent. As nonprofits, we should consider where we might combine our resources and even think strategically about mergers that make sense and that will allow us to work better and smarter. And we desperately need significant longer-term investments. We cannot do any of this without investing the effort and time it takes to form deeper and even more diverse partnerships. And I suggest we need to form regional alliances, connecting and learning from our sister cities in the South who also want to see the promise of economic opportunity for all realized. So sometime this morning while you're here, I urge you to take a minute to read the storyboards that we have around the room that offer just some highlights about a handful of our partners and individuals that we've served. And numerous organizations in this room as well have been chipping away for 15, 20, even 50 years. The stories are just a small sampling of the good work being done and the courage it takes to step out of our comfort zone. I know we live in a caring community, and I think we may be ready in Savannah to step out of our comfort zone and try some new approaches. So we also took time this year to recognize local organizations and some new players, and we've created 3 new awards to showcase the innovative approaches initiated by area businesses, social service providers, and in our neighborhoods. We recruited a small group of judges, got the word out, and then we were overwhelmed by the responses. Our judges and staff had a chance to learn about some powerful new energy circulating and taking on Savannah's issues with real spark and heart. The first is our business champion. And this was a very tough call in this first year. The nominations reminded us that it's quite possible to do well in business while doing good in the community. And it came down to a company that has made an unusual commitment that we hope can ignite long-range change. I'm not sure if David Castro is here. I think not. So I'll just tell you. I'm sorry? Wonderful. Would you come up on the stage? Surprise! So, our first Outstanding Business Champion Award goes to International Paper for its decision to create a one-of-a-kind sabbatical for their employee, Michael O'Neill, so that he could spend full time as director of Parent University. By taking this action, the company is effectively making a substantial investment in a nonprofit that has worked to educate parents in life and parenting skills. The decision will also accelerate the growth of the Early Learning College at Parent University, a joint endeavor to better prepare kids for school, created through the partnership between Mike and Parent University and Paul Fisher at Savannah Early Childhood Foundation. The idea came from local mill management and required input and approval up through executive management at the Memphis headquarters. This is an innovative idea worth replicating, so we want to thank you, International Paper, and thanks to Mike and Paul. Is Latasha Bruin here? Come on up, Latasha. Latasha is Taniqua Gadsden's daughter. And before I announce the winner of our new Advocacy Award, I want to take a minute. Our community suffered a tremendous loss this year with the untimely death of Taniqua, who was executive director of the Neighborhood Improvement Association. Taniqua accomplished much in her 40 years, starting in her teens at the Chatham-Savannah Youth Futures Authority. And then in 1998, she began working for NIA and took the helm as director 10 years later, succeeding her mentor, Edward Chisholm. At NIA, she expanded the volunteer income tax assistance sites. Since 2008, the VITA sites have prepared more than 37,324 tax returns, saving lower-income families millions in tax preparation fees, and bringing more than $23 million in earned income tax credit dollars back into our local economy. Taniqua approached her work with humility, dedication, and enthusiasm, and while she was with us, she was truly an unsung hero. For these reasons, Step Up has decided to dedicate our new Outstanding Advocacy Award to her spirit and call it the Taniqua Gadsden Advocacy Award. So this was a squeaker. We had several strong nominees, including some of our own board members and Neighborhood Leadership Academy graduates. But our judges awarded Heads Up Guidance Service. Is Andrea here? So this is a small group. Heads Up Guidance Service, HUGS, is a small group that provides much-needed mental and behavioral health counseling at rates that anybody can afford, with an option for clients to volunteer time and labor as well, all without filing insurance forms or accepting government grants. Their volunteer business model extended to a terrific remodeling of space right next to the Savannah Baptist Center that includes rooms for educational seminars as well as physical therapy. Think yoga and runners for recovery. So thank you, HUGS, for showing us an innovative way to offer services. All right. So finally, thank you, and thank you, Latasha. Our outstanding neighborhood leader, This may have been the most exciting category. We were awestruck by the range and diversity of activists, many of them young and working for change in remarkable ways. Indeed, it was such a tug of war that we wound up with 2 winners in a tie. So I'd like to invite, I hope they're here, Molly Lieberman and Project Inspire up to the stage. Shamad. Is Molly here? Molly may not be here. I'll talk about Molly in a minute, but first, Project Inspire. Talk about what a small group of committed citizens can do. I recently learned about Rashamad Lee Torrance and the men who make up Project Inspire, and then I got to watch them in action at a city event just about 2 weeks ago. These guys are on fire. They're getting into our schools to ignite courageous conversations about real-life issues. Their goal is to encourage, empower, and inspire the upcoming generation through forums, workshops, and community service. And I believe they can do this. Their energy is just infectious, so thank you so much. We'll get Molly her award later, but she just, for those of you who may not know, Molly Lieberman is founder of Loop It Up and Handmade Neighborhood. She has her hands in everything in our community, from For Heart's Sake to Deep Center, Healthy Savannah, Emergent Savannah, and many more. She has a big, big heart for children, but her connection to people is really through all things creative. Handmade brings together women who are handcrafting a slow and steady economic boost to Savannah families and their neighborhoods. So finally, I ask you to just take a second to turn your attention to the Commit to Action form. We have long said that there is a way in for everybody, and we're revisiting the idea of individuals and groups agreeing to commit to specific actions, some of which we listed on the form, and others of which you can fill in the blanks and create yourselves. And those agencies that are already engaged in this work, and many of you are here, can simply record what you're doing. But this time around, our staff plans to reach out and follow up with each of you who commit to action. And our intention is to compile all of these actions and report the totals to the community in the next year. And I think that by raising awareness of what is being done in our neighborhoods, at our workplaces, and in our churches, that we can inspire even more creative thinking about what can be done. So if you would, fill these out either before you leave or take them with you, and make sure that you send them back to us. And believe me, we've got your number. So thank you so much, and if I may ask for Otis Johnson.
Good morning. You have in your program just a snapshot of who David Dodson is. But it is my honor and privilege today to tell you a little bit more about David Dodson, because when you hear him speak, you will truly understand that this is one of the unique souls on this planet. I met David about 20 years ago when the Mayor Reynolds Babcock Foundation was thinking about taking a new direction and strategizing on how to go in that direction. And David was on the board at that time. And I believe that that was the first time we met. But we also had an opportunity to cross paths in the state of Mississippi. David had done what he was supposed to do, and I was coming to do what I was supposed to do, and we were crossing paths, and little did we know that later we would become colleagues at MDC in Durham, North Carolina. David has been an interesting person in a number of ways. Just let me tell you about his education and you'll see how interesting he can be. David received his baccalaureate degree in architecture and urban policy from Yale. Then he decided that he wanted to explore some other things. And so he earned a master's in ethics and theology at the Yale Divinity School. Now, think about that. On the one hand, he's thinking about building buildings and how you create communities that are sustainable and equitable. And on the other side, he's thinking about the ethics and theology of how all of this should work in a just society. It's fascinating to me, his path. And then that wasn't enough. I guess he decided that with all of this knowledge, he had to learn how to put it to use. And so he earned another master's in management, both public and private management. So he was hedging his bet to be prepared to go in either sector. And so he earned another master's from the School of Organization and Management at Yale. So he's an Ivy Leaguer of the first order with 3 degrees from Yale. So then he went into the private sector at Cummins, which is a major manufacturer of diesel engines, and he was the executive director of their foundation. And from there, he found his way in 1999 to the MDC organization. And I'd like to also say that I serve as the chairman of that organization, and now we have Miss Kathy Hill, who's also on that board. David is a very deep thinker. A person of passion and commitment, and you will see and experience that as soon as I sit down. So now I introduce you to David Dodson.
I think I'll just sit down. Otis, thank you. What a privilege to be in your city and to witness the energy and commitment of everybody in this room. When I stepped into the reception last night, I knew there was something profound going on just by the spirit. And then it continued, and I see it magnified this morning. This is truly a remarkable community, and Step Up Savannah, a remarkable organization. And it's a real privilege to be here. I am enormously excited and a little scared to have 2 of my board members in this room. So this is time to deliver, I guess. But it's a great honor. So this morning I want to share some information with you. I want to tell some stories. I want to ask for your stories. I want to issue a challenge, and I want to share an inspirational poem with you, and do all that so you can get back to work in a small amount of time. So let us jump into it. A little about MDC. We are a regional organization based in Durham, a nonprofit, and our focus is to remove the barriers that separate people and communities from opportunity across the South. and we're particularly concerned about liberating people from poverty and connecting people to opportunity. So if that sounds suspiciously like Step Up Savannah, let's just say we must have been drinking the same Kool-Aid. And, you know, we've got a chef in common named Otis Johnson, so he must be spiking the punch in both organizations, I think it's fair to say. What I want to talk with you about this morning, though, is about how we build and why we must build what MDC calls an infrastructure of opportunity. And that is laid out in this report, State of the South, which is our flagship report. It's on the MDC website. We produce it every couple of years. And most recently, we were concerned with the growing recognition of profound and structural inequality, income inequality in America, and said, what can we do about that? So I want to share with you a little information. I want to share with you some ideas. I want to reflect with you on what opportunity looks like. I want to get us to focus on the issue of economic mobility. And then I want to invite us all to continue to do what everyone in this room is doing to change the patterns of opportunity for people who don't have it. So let's get going. We've got a few slides up here, and we'll jump in. So here's the easy question. It's breakfast. We're not going to start with a really tough one. How many of you believe that where a person starts out in life should not determine where they end up? Woo! Yes! We can have a little applause. Okay, I'm really glad to see all. I didn't count, but I think every hand went up, and that's really a good thing. This is really what we're talking about when we talk about the so-called American dream. But we know there is a lot of uncertainty and doubt today in America as to whether that dream is real, and certainly some real feeling about whether it extends to everybody, not just to some. So if you read the New York Times, as I try to, I can't trust my local paper all the time in Durham. Listen to that little rumble. In July 2013, this map appeared on the front page of the Times. Have any of you seen this map before? Okay. So this is a map of upward mobility, and it indicates how what the percentage likelihood is that a child born to parents in the bottom 20% of the income distribution will be able to rise to the top 20% by the time they're an adult. So it measures being born at the bottom and having a chance to rise to the top, which is one definition of the American dream. And where the map is red indicates where upward economic mobility is most difficult, where it is most constrained, where the pathway is steepest. And let's all do a little stand and shout. Where is it red, ladies and gentlemen? In the South. So some of you have seen the poverty map, some of you have seen the other maps where the South is red, but we look at a lot of maps at MDC, and I've never seen a map where the South was this red through and through. And what that says is that economic opportunity is more constrained in the region of America where we live and where MDC works than in any other part of the country. The people at Harvard and Berkeley who did the data underlying this map also looked at the 50 largest cities in America. And you may know this, but the two lowest cities on the ranking for upward mobility in America happened to be in the South. 49 was Charlotte, and 50 was Atlanta. Lowest opportunity for upward mobility of any of the 50 largest cities is Atlanta. So as we say, Houston may not have a problem, but Atlanta does, and Savannah does, and some other places do. We've got some real work to do. And when I ask you that question, who believes in America that where you start out shouldn't determine where you end up? Look at this. Mobility is not a reality for enough people. So you may say, but we're prosperous. Well, let's look at some questions here. We're going to look at some patterns of mobility. We're going to look at who is stuck, because not everybody is stuck. And we're going to ask ourselves and answer, I hope, the question, how can young people growing up in our region, and particularly in Savannah and this region, have greater access to opportunity and participate more in the prosperity that some of us enjoy? So the rising tide lifts all boats, right? You smart people. Okay, so I have some folks at MDC, Otis knows them. We call them the young'uns. They're 20-something. They're really smart. They do all the work. I just get to stand up here like Charlie McCarthy or the ventriloquist and quote what they do. So they said there are all these rankings. Let's look at where Forbes magazine says the climate is best for business among the 100 largest cities. Then look at upward mobility, where 100 is the worst and 1 is the best. Then let's look at the poverty rate. Then let's look at how poverty increased, and let's put them all together into one chart. This chart, ladies and gentlemen, is why I cannot go to Raleigh, North Carolina anymore. Because what it says is, best community in the United States for business, 2012, Raleigh, North Carolina. How good is it from the rising tide lifts all boats? We have abundant opportunity. Where does it rank on mobility, where 1 is best and 100 is the worst? Somehow that tide is leaving some boats on the shore. And look at the last column, increase in poverty since 2000. It nearly doubles. You can follow this down. You can see Atlanta, 9th best for business, 96th out of 100 for mobility. Poverty rate nearly doubles. So economic vitality is not touching all the people. And this demonstrates this. So we need some connective tissue. We have to figure out how to connect people to opportunity. And what we believe is, just like roads connect people to each other and are our physical infrastructure, we need our communities to create the infrastructure of opportunity. Now these data, I'm not going to elaborate on them, but at the top, this shows the annual rate of real income growth by distribution into quintiles. So for the period 1947 to 1979, look at that top line. It was actually people in the bottom 20% who had the highest annual rate of income growth. This was a very good period of post-war America, when people across the distribution, but particularly people at the bottom, saw their incomes rise year over year. But look at the second chart. That's real income growth 1979 to 2010, and it's exactly the opposite. And we know this. Most of the economic gains have gone to the top 20%, and there's actually been lost ground at the bottom. So keep that in mind. That's one of the reasons that we have the inequality that people are so concerned about. Now, I don't know about you, but inequality scares me when I hear about it. I don't know what to do about it. The fact that there's a 1% and a 99%, I don't know how to change that. Janet Yellen doesn't know how to change it, and excuse me, Donald Trump doesn't know how to change it either. But I do like this quote from Robert Reich, who was the Secretary of Labor under Bill Clinton, because he makes an important connection. And he says, inequality would not be a problem, or as much of a problem in America, if upward mobility were stronger. That is, if people had a better chance to climb that ladder from the bottom to a better place, over time we'd have less inequality. This is what I want us to focus on. Not to be paralyzed by inequality, but to be focused on how we catalyze upward mobility. And I am so happy that we are meeting in Savannah Tech, because when we talk about the infrastructure of opportunity, maybe the pivot point, the anchor point, is a technical community college. Maybe a little more about that later. We're heavily biased toward community and technical colleges at MDC. But when we think about an infrastructure of opportunity that can foster mobility, as the dean said, mobility, the key to mobility, or a certain key, is education, particularly a post-secondary credential. So inequality is a problem, but mobility is a powerful answer to inequality. Are you with me? Okay. So let's kind of look at where we are. We've got some unevenness here. These are just some data, but green is Savannah's median household income. Gray is Georgia, blue is the United States. And you can see here on in the second bar, for African American families in Savannah, median income is lower than both Georgia and the United States. Curiously, and I don't know the sample, for Latinos, it's actually higher in Savannah than in Georgia and in the United States. But overall, for whites, you've got prosperity here. But again, that prosperity isn't entirely well shared. This chart and the one that follows it are two that I really want you to focus on. These 5 bands each represent the quintiles of income distribution divided into fifths. And if you look at the one at the far left, that's the lowest 20% on the income distribution. What this slide is a picture of where children born to parents in each quintile end up as adults. So look at this bar here. That's where children born in families in the lowest 20% end up as adults. And what it says, and this really gives me pain and heartburn, is that if you're a child born to parents in the bottom 20% in Savannah, there's a 33% chance, a 1/3 chance that that child will himself or herself end up in the bottom 20%. There's another 37% chance that they may move up, but only move up 1 income quintile. Now, the 40th percentile is below the median. So what that says is there's a better than 70% chance that a child born to parents at the bottom won't get to the median income when they're an adult. What did we say at the beginning? Do you believe where you start out should determine where you end up? No. But what's happening in Savannah right now? A 70% chance that a child born to parents at the bottom won't make it too far. We call that stickiness at the bottom, people being stuck in place. And if you notice this, and Otis and I were talking about this yesterday, this is where a child will end up if that child is born to a parent in poverty. So this is a picture of intergenerational transfer of poverty. The fact that poor families, unless they find a boost upward, are heavily likely to have children who themselves will remain poor. And that's, I think the nicest term would be to say unacceptable. There's stickiness at the top too. We won't go there, but at the far end is the high. If you're born at the top, you are lucky because there's 1/3 of a chance that you can just stay there. So we're not going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about this one today. Leave Nirvana over there on the side. So remember that slide, and then remember this, which is sort of its counterpart. This is not for Savannah. We don't have numbers for Savannah, but these are national data examined over a 30-year period by the Pew Charitable Trusts. And what this shows is the impact on that same child born to parents at the bottom if they don't get a post-secondary degree, and then if they do. So look at this. Here's the bottom 20%. Nationally, if I'm a child born to parents in the bottom 20% and I don't get a post-secondary degree, there's a 47% chance I'll be at the bottom. But if I get a college credential, the likelihood that I'm at the bottom drops to 10%. I think that's the most powerful piece of data I know. It shows what the dean said, that getting a credential after high school, especially one that has relevance in the labor market, is liberating. It is the turbocharger of mobility. I don't know anything more powerful than these data. And it basically says we may not be able to cure inequality, but through education, we can do something about mobility. So I want to tell you a story, then I want to ask you a question. So about 125 years ago, my great-grandmother and her brother, Henry, were growing up in Fairfield County, South Carolina. I don't know if you've ever been there, and I hope if you've been there, you were just driving through. It was not a good place. Uncle Henry and my great-grandmother Mary had parents were sharecroppers, probably former slaves. They had 2 books in their house, a Bible and a McGuffey reader. The parents could hardly read either of them. But somehow Uncle Henry was smart. And they were Presbyterian. Some Presbyterian missionary found Uncle Henry, said, "You sound like you're smart," sent him off to school in Charlotte. He went to a place called Biddle University, now Johnson C. Smith University, went to the divinity school, did really well. He got sent to the University of Chicago, this child of a family where the parents were semi-literate. Got a PhD in ancient literature, became a professor of Greek, Assyrian, and Hebrew. That is not a prescription for upward mobility. But anyway, he became ultimately the president for 40 years of Johnson C. Smith University. Now, what that enabled him to do was to call for his sister's children, including my grandmother, and said, the schools stop for children of African American descent in South Carolina at the 8th grade, but you send Ella up here to Charlotte and we'll get her educated. Well, Ella got educated, hallelujah. She went off to Washington, D.C., she met my grandfather, and it's because of Uncle Henry having a chance at upward mobility and education that I'm here and not stuck in Fairfield County. Hallelujah. God bless Uncle Henry. So who is your Uncle Henry? Maybe you're Uncle Henry. Maybe you're the one who's starting your family on a journey. But I want you to think for a minute, talk to your neighbor. What is your family's mobility story? And who was it in your family's history who started that move from a place that might not have been so good to a better place? So spend just a couple of minutes talking about who is your Uncle Henry and what happened that made them move up. Okay, ding, 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 sorry. You can take this home, you can still keep talking about this when you... So did anybody here have a mobility story? Sounds like... what were some of the factors in the mobility stories that you talked about that allowed people to get to a better place? Just stand up and shout out. Yes, back there, please. emphasis on education, and you didn't have a choice about it. Very nice. Who else had that same kind of cultural, yes. What else? Other factors that made a difference in the mobility stories you talked about? The GI Bill, so there was public policy that helped give a boost. Who said GI Bill?
We both said her grandfather and my father.
Okay. Who else had something like the GI Bill that really, where there was public policy that helped break open the path of opportunity? Other things, yes. Yes, Mayor.
I think the mindset of the individual has a lot to do.
Okay.
Sometimes you've got to look at yourself and you don't have the support of somebody saying to do that. You have got to want to do it yourself.
Okay, so ambition, personal drive, really important. Thank you. Yes.
I think mine was the community.
Oh, you are also smart.
And neighborhoods, you know, when you think about neighborhoods, everybody touched you in your neighborhood, and they pushed you, and if you did something, well, my grandmama got the switch.
Okay.
But it's those kinds of things, and teachers, even though we were very poor, the teachers stuck with you, and pushed you and made you to. So I think it takes a whole village.
It takes a village, and it takes support. It takes a culture of support. Really important. So you all are brilliant, or else you saw my notes. Uh-oh, yes, last one.
Ours was a lack of education with my family, lack of education in every single area of our lives. We didn't know how to do Pell Grants or anything until I became an adult and had all my kids. And with that being turned around, now my daughters are homeowners, and now I have one daughter that's a landlord. So we were amongst that 70%, but through God, we changed that.
Excellent. Thank you. So listen to what you said, because I think you began to paint through your own experience what I'm calling the path to possibility. Just listen to what you said and look at this. Individual mobility rests on a combination of what the gentleman back here said: personal drive and ambition. That's really important. Deliberately supportive institutional practices and public policies like the GI Bill, eradication of structural barriers, and community supports. If those are true, and they're true because you said they were true, you named what made a difference, how can we make sure all of those factors are operating in the lives of young people who start out farthest from opportunity? You have just named, it isn't one thing, it's a cluster. It's a cluster of belief in self and a drive for something better. It's community culture of support. It's supportive policy. It's mentoring. It's community practices. How do we make sure that bundle of enabling supports is present in the lives of young people who start out farthest from opportunity? At MDC, we have done some work with the Gates Foundation, and they've got what we find is a very powerful little framework for thinking about the pathway to that holy grail, which is a post-secondary credential that unlocks labor market opportunity. And they call it, and we call it, the lost momentum framework. And it's pretty simple. How do we get young people starting very early? Mayor Johnson would say starting pre-birth, prepared to enter and succeed ultimately in secondary school, make the connection to post-secondary, enter, successfully oriented, progress, complete, and move on to employment. That's the momentum pathway. If we map that and map the progress of young people along it, we know that many are moving forward, but there's also a loss. There are loss points at every stage in the pathway. That's why this is called a loss momentum framework. But we often go in and help communities map who is making progress and who isn't. Where are the loss points? Why are the loss points? And where are the on-ramps that can return people to the forward momentum? So keep this picture in mind. We think it's really helpful. It's going to appear again in a second. Now, part of the lost momentum is about persistence. And this chart, we like colored bars and charts at MDC, is one that's a little old, but it's powerful. It says for every young person starting 9th grade, how far do they get on the path to completion? Here is Georgia. In Georgia, for every 100 9th graders, 37% don't graduate high school on time. Not too good. The blue says that another 20% graduate from high school on time, but don't enroll in some form of post-secondary education. So that's already more than half not getting on that momentum pathway. The next is another 14%, I think it is, go directly to college but don't make it to the second year. Another 11% are still enrolled in the second year but don't graduate on time, and it's only 18%. Is that the number? 18% of 9th graders in Georgia actually make it to graduation within 150% of the time taken to get a degree. So 3 years for a 2-year degree, 6 years for a 4-year degree. We're losing so many people on the early stages of that lost momentum pathway. And probably if we said for every kindergartner how many move forward, it would be even worse. So this is what our work is. How do we stop the lost points and reclaim young people so they can move along that lost momentum framework? A couple more things just to think about. Even if you're moving forward, as we know, families' levels of affluence can influence whether you persist. What this slide shows, it's a little busy, but basically, if you're a low-income college student with a top math score on a standardized entry test, you have the same chance of graduating with a bachelor's degree as a rich student with mediocre results. So economic preparation, economic status correlates to preparation and support and can really influence who makes progress. Now let's take that back a little more and look at two other things. This is in public schools, data from the Southern Education Foundation. We know that concentrated poverty and high poverty schools do not serve as powerful environments for universal success. In Chatham County, 53% of students from low-income families are in high-poverty schools. Only 13% of students not from low-income backgrounds are in high-poverty schools. Now, Gary Orfield is a well-known Stanford education professor, and he said, there may not be magic in a black student sitting next to a white student necessarily, but there's enormous magic that comes when a poor student sits next to a middle-class student. That economic diversity in the classroom and in the school has a powerful effect. And in half the schools here, and it's not just Chatham County, it's around the country, economic resegregation is a powerful force. Another statistic, in Chatham County, 55% of black students are in high-poverty schools. Only 11% of white students are. So again, the factors that contribute to loss and momentum are deeply baked into how we choose to live and who goes to school. Now this happy little chart, if you're in purple, you're in trouble. This is the economic segregation impact. I just thought, you've had your breakfast, now we're going to have to start getting tough. It's a composite that looks at segregation by income, by education, and by occupation. And what this essentially says, and I think this is Chatham County sort of down in here. You're kind of dark purple, I'm up here, we're dark purple, that the country is beginning to experience higher and higher levels of economic segregation by education, occupation, and income. And what that means is that has a catalytic effect on public schools, but also on our collective culture of who we consider to be we, and who we mentor, support, all of the community supports that we talked about. We see from these charts over time, 1990 being blue, the lime being 2013, that the percentage of population, total white, black, and Hispanic, living in high poverty neighborhoods is actually rising. We are resegregating economically. Not too cool. And with that, something is happening to our culture. Our colleague Bill Bishop wrote a book called The Big Sort, where he said we're voluntarily clustering into like communities. Happily not in this room today. This is fabulous. We all need to look like this all the time. The Big Sort said we're increasingly living in balkanized communities whose inhabitants find other Americans, I love this, to be culturally incomprehensible. Now, Madam Mayor, how do I mentor someone if I think and they think I am culturally incomprehensible? We are good in bonding social capital, that links people of like minds together. Very weak in bridging social capital, that connects people who are diverse. Again, I love standing up here and looking at, and Step Up is bridging some social capital. That's really powerful. You're re-knitting. Yes! Thank you. Thank you. And as our colleague at MDC on the board, Ambassador James Joseph, former ambassador to South Africa, we run the risk of forming smaller and smaller communities of meaning and memory. That is, places where I can't understand you, you can't understand me, and we can't understand each other. And if that's the case, how are we going to reach out and lift up those children who are growing up in isolation? So this is kind of who we are and what we have to combat with this infrastructure of opportunity. So what that says is, remember our blue chart. The infrastructure of opportunity, or the lost momentum framework, exists in an ecosystem. And that ecosystem can be supportive or it can work against success for all. I love, as I listened at the beginning, Step Up Savannah is creating a new and different ecosystem of success for young people and adults in Savannah. That's really powerful. You are working on living wage, academic and career counseling, transportation, media messages, work supports. You're saying it isn't just about the pathways, it's about the environment in which those pathways sit that we all have to work on. It's really powerful. You're doing this. I love it. This is easy. I mean, I just hold a mirror up to you and this is it. Keep at it, please. So what we have to do is turn small pockets of opportunity into an infrastructure of opportunity. And that's what we wrote about here. The entire community has to function in an